All right, everybody, welcome to the 96 Person Bringer podcast. I am your host, Bryan Stoops. From the age of 7 until I was about 24, I was a magician in Southern California. Then for about the last 21 years, I've been focused on courting my wife, marrying my wife, raising our 2 kids, intensely studying the martial arts, and being a professional educator. In 2020, I started stand-up comedy. I've had some interesting results along the way. That brings us to the 96 Person Bringer podcast, where I have hour-long, insightful conversations with my comedian friends. Our guest today, I know she's going to be awesome. I actually met her because she was the ride for another comedian on one of my shows. And then I looked her up on social media, watched like 10 minutes of her material and was like, oh my God, she's awesome. She destroyed on that show. I had her on another show shortly after that. She was incredible on that show. Really funny comedian, and then just an engaging, interesting person to talk to about comedy. And I just knew she would be a really, really good guest for this show. So right when we started, I knew I wanted to have her on. Ladies and gentlemen, Alaina Bamfield. Hi, Alaina.
Hi, thank you so much. That was so nice, Bryan.
Yeah, so thanks for making the time to be on, and I know we're going to have a great time. So everything is structured, but just structured to try to keep us to about an hour. Like I was saying before we started recording, if you're really ripping and rolling on a topic, we can absolutely continue. But the first 15 minutes, we're going to leave that open to, I want you to kind of tell us your comedy story, how you got started, everything. Like, let us know who you are as a comedian and what your journey has looked like. You can also talk about, as an intro, anything that you want to promote or let people know about. And then at the very end of the episode, we'll absolutely circle back to letting people know how they can follow you as well. We'll also make sure all your information, handles, URLs, all that kind of stuff is in the text for the episode as well. But 15 minutes, kind of tell us your story, Alaina.
Okay, so I guess the first thing that I feel weird as a comedian, right? Because I feel like a lot of stand-ups are like, oh yeah, I grew up watching this. I grew up watching this person, that person, like this comedy special, this album, whatever. I didn't grow up in a household like that. I think the closest thing I had to like a comedy influence was maybe like staying up too late and watching Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Okay.
Which is also kind of interesting because I am not good off the cuff. Like I'm not, I don't feel like I'm a good riffer or a good like crowd work comedian.
Okay.
Feel very joke oriented. But that, had some sort of influence on me for sure. But I was dating a guy, my high school sweetheart. We were together for a while, for 4.5 years. I feel like a lot of comedians start comedy after a breakup. So that was like the biggest breakup I've had. I was young, I was 22, and he had listened to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot when we were together, and I was working at an insurance company, and so I started listening to some of those episodes, and I think it was maybe like a Whitney Cummings or Nikki Glazer episode, where just a female talking about doing stand up. And I was like, oh, I think I can do that. And so that I kind of planted the seed. And while we were still together, I was trying to write jokes and go to open mics. And then, long story short, it just wasn't working out with the relationship for me to be going out to bars at night and hanging with men and, all the whole thing. So it was doomed to fail from the beginning, but stand-up comedy kind of like pushed me into the breakup and everything. And then I took a few months after the breakup, and then I started hitting it really hard. And this was November of 2019 when I started doing stand-up. So I'm kind of a COVID comic. It's kind of a COVID baby. I know you said you started in 2020,
Yeah.
Which is a really weird time. Did you do a lot of Zoom stuff?
That's entirely how I started. Like,
Oh,
it was something I wanted to do for a long time. We were all trying to not go crazy. And so, I mean, in a weird way, it was like the most productive it could have been for that time, not having done it prior to the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. See, I had maybe, like, what is that? 4 or 5 months on,
Mhm.
8 months off in Michigan, especially. I'm from Michigan. So we had a lot of weird, like, our governor would like open us up for a month or two and then shut us down for another five. Like it was kind of crazy all over the place. So we kept having opportunities to do stand up and then having them taken away again. Like I remember sitting at my open mic that I was running at Ellison Brewery on Tuesdays. It's not even a thing anymore. But I remember sitting there after the open mic and everyone in the bar, we were all sitting there watching the TV as they were announcing that we were shutting down like the next day. So we were like, wow, that sucks. But yeah, so that was all in 2019, and so I'm coming up on 4 years in the next month here,
Yeah.
which is crazy, crazy to think about. But yeah, it really was. It was honestly, I guess, just meant to be. All it took was like one podcast episode for me to be like, I'm gonna do stand up comedy. Um, and then I made the mistake of dating a comedian
Okay.
right off the bat. Started dating someone in the local Michigan scene, uh, and it was honestly, I think, I mean, I'm a big proponent of everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I know myself, and I was so new to comedy when the shutdown happened that it was kind of like it would have been easy for me to just drop it and walk away, if that makes any sense. Like I still had like the office job, and I was,
Sure.
still like for the most part a regular person when comedy got taken away from me. And then I started dating the comedian, and so all through the pandemic, he lived in the house full of comics. So all through the pandemic, I was just kind of around people that were like, "Oh, can't wait for this to get back. Can't wait to go on the road." So like during that time, I kind of like had some time to like sit down and listen to people that have done it for a few years and get a little bit of information on mostly like the local open mic scene and the not so local. Michigan's kind of split up into three parts. You can do Grand Rapids and then Detroit are the two biggest, like with the most comics, the most open mics, most opportunities to get up. And then where I'm from, Lansing is a little bit smaller. I think there's more comics now, but like when I started, I was like, gosh, there's like 8 of us, like pretty small scene.
Yeah.
And like 2 or 3, maybe 4 opportunities to get up at night, and then the pandemic took away so many rooms from Michigan specifically, but Lansing also. And excuse me. But yeah, so and to keep myself from going crazy during the shutdown, I started my own podcast. It was a solo podcast called Leave Me Alone in the back here.
Nice.
I'm getting back to it. I've recorded 2 solo episodes. I'm trying to get to 4 before I start putting them out because I'm sure with starting this, like it's so stressful. Like
Yes.
not having something backlogged. Like you want to have stuff to put out and you don't want to have to do it the week of. So I'm trying to get that going again. And I haven't recorded in probably a year. But,
Gotcha.
but that's my only thing to promote, really. I don't have any shows that I run. I'm hoping to get something going, but I don't want to say anything about it because I'm afraid of the universe.
I understand that completely. Now,
Yeah.
Now remind me, I mean, you're still in New York?
Yes, I'm still in New York. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm in
So
Brooklyn.
when did you come out here, and like what did that look like when you started doing comedy in New York?
Oh man, I moved out here in February, and it's a lot different. So Michigan open mics are at a bar with people that are Midwest to the core, and they're not going to get up and leave. Like they might, but they're going to wait a couple. Like they'll set out a couple comics. You know what I mean? Like eat their food slowly, pay their bill, whatever, get out of there. But a lot of them will sit and stay and they'll watch. They'll order another beer. So I was really spoiled because it would also be like a 7-minute set for an open mic. Like the first time I did stand up, they were like, "You have 7 minutes," and I was like, "I'll do two." Like Like I don't have 7 minutes, you crazy person. But so it was a big change coming out here and performing for uh audiences full of comedians and doing 3 minutes.
Mhm.
Was a big change. And then also when you move, I have some connections and they were, nice enough to put me up. I thank God I run into people like you, that have stuff and want to put new people up, and like take chances on that and everything. And so that was like really difficult. I'd say the first 6 months were the hardest. And now I feel like through going consistently to like the same open mics every week or every other week, because there's benefits to going to different open mics all the time. You meet people, like new people every time you go out.
Mhm.
But if you go and you do the same ones, like that's how you make friends, and that's how it makes like a Monday exciting. Like I'm like, oh, I love Monday at Pine Box. I know I'm
Nice.
gonna see X, Y, and Z, and
Yeah.
so it was mostly slowing down and not thinking about the comedy and just focusing on like how to have like a life because I've never moved away before.
Wow.
I mean, I've lived outside of my parents' house. I'm 26, but like,
Mhm.
but I've never left Michigan. So it was important to build a life before I started freaking out about what shows I'm booked on, I guess.
Nice.
But and also I have 2 dogs, so that helps ground me a lot. Like
Gotcha.
when I first moved here, they were having trouble like with their routine because they're dogs that have lived with a yard most of their life. Even when I lived in Lansing, I had like a backyard. I could just open the door and
Sure.
they were able to, come in and out as they please. And so like the first 2 weeks of being here was me just trying to figure out what times they wanted to go to the bathroom. And, they used to be grazers, like with their food. I used to just keep their bowl full, but now it's like I have to control when you poop. But I have to know when you eat, and that's the weirdest thing to me. Like if you don't eat right now, you're not gonna shit in the morning.
Right. No, gotcha. That's
Sorry.
that's got to be a huge. They're Michigan dogs. That's got to be
Yeah, yeah.
a huge
They went from
adjustment.
chicken coops and rabbits to rats and pigeons.
Gotcha. Well, we'll make sure we get, your podcast information and all your social stuff posted and all those things as we move along. So something I try not to do is like every answer. Well, now let me give my 2 cents on the blah blah. So we're gonna kind of move into the next question. I mean,
Okay, okay.
certainly like if there's something organic going on, like we'll talk about that. But like I try not to, well, the guests shared what they think. So now let me do here's my thought. Like, so we're gonna move forward. But I love this format because I hear so many different interesting ideas. So I love the idea of I'm moving to a new place. Let me set up my life. And let me not like stress out about what I'm booked on. That sounds incredibly healthy and self-aware in a way that like performers sometimes to their detriment, I don't think they think that way.
Thank
There
you. I've been
yeah,
trying to tell the few newer people than me that I've met that I'm like, do that. Don't worry about stand up yet. Just
yeah,
do your life. So yeah, thank you.
yeah. And like I'm in a place like, so I have 2 kids, but they're older, and it's like everybody's kind of doing their thing right now. Like my daughter just started high school, my son's got a good groove going, my wife's got a job that she really likes. So it's like everybody can kind of go do their thing, and then like we come back together really well as a family. It's like before we found that balance, like nightmare. So I
Yeah,
think in any context, like, man, that's just really good thinking on your part. Because it's like, like, dude, comedy will be there and it'll be the same
yeah,
people in the same places, like for the most part. A couple people might have dropped off, but the people that are going to do it will be there. So I seriously think that's like really savvy on your part. There's
thank
going to
you.
be,
Thank
yeah,
you.
seriously. There's going to be some overlap, like you already started talking about some of these things. And so there's no pressure. comedians are used to like, oh, they booked me for 5 minutes. If I get up there and do 2 minutes, like it's a disaster. This doesn't work like that. Like we're having a conversation. So you kind of spoke about like Whose Line as one of your influences. So I'm wondering now that you're in stand-up and you're doing it, like, or have you become aware of it, of people? Who are your influences nowadays? Like, what does that look like? And what do those people kind of mean to you?
Yeah. Okay. So other than Whose Line, sorry. Other than Whose Line, I think Rosebud Baker. They're not like Rosebud Baker. Her YouTube special with StoopFest was so good. I loved it so much. Like she's one of those people that I'm like, oh, if I could work with anyone, I just would love to open for her someday.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one, I don't know if you know who Kelly Bachman is.
I don't.
She is such a kick-ass comedian. I just hosted a show for a friend that she was on, and she's so funny.
Nice.
She was on the HBO or I think it's FX. It's on Hulu. It's called Hysterical. Have you seen it?
I don't think so.
It's a documentary about women in comedy.
Oh, okay.
And there's this scene in the documentary where she's like a new comic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone takes a video of her on stage at an open mic or a bar show, something like that. And Harvey Weinstein is in the audience.
Uh-huh.
And she like calls him out, and people tell her to shut up, and it's like this whole like it's like a very empowering scene, you know. And she goes on to like talk about like her own like sexual assault, stuff like that. And so like it was just like inspiring to me. And as like I guess some more background on me, I'm a victim of the Larry Nassar case. So hearing her talk about that for me, I was like, okay, I can write some stuff about this, like I have some stuff to talk about, I guess. And so like that was really inspiring to me. Outside of that, just like comedic styling, so like Anthony Jeselnik. I really like dark humor. I guess that's probably why I like the Whiskey Fist special too. A lot of dark stuff, but I also love like Shane Wang, like you're like Netflix people as well. Yeah. So I just love stand-up comedy, and I think it's like special for me because I haven't been into it my whole life, so I feel like a kid with it. I'm only 4 years in to stand up, so I'm only 4 years into like really loving it, which is cool for me. I stay with a 4-year-old.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That like where it's kind of new, but you're really into it, and yeah, no, that's a great. Because you and I are at a very somewhat similar point. I'm a little bit behind you, but like to have that newness and that passion is pretty great. Absolutely. Okay, so we are gonna roll along. So stand up can be really, really hard. The attrition rates are nuts sometimes. A lot of people think they can do it, and then they get up there and the reality is different sometimes. And I mean, any kind of performing arts endeavor is just really rough. So, why, and again, there's some overlap here. You've already started talking about some of this, but like, why do you do it? What do you love about it?
I don't know why. I don't know why I do it, because like I hear so many people like they do stand up the first time and it like goes good, and that's why they keep doing it. And I'm like, it didn't even go that well for me. Like I was just like, oh no, I think I can do this. Like I think this is funny. And I think like probably like my third open mic I did, it was good, and I was like, oh okay, but for me, why I keep doing it, especially with the darker material, because it's not all about Larry Nassar or like,
Yeah.
I got other stuff. I get kind of insecure about the Larry Nassar stuff sometimes, especially when the jokes are doing well. It just makes me, I don't know, makes me feel like I have like another family or something. I'm like, they're good too. Like, but especially with the dark humor, like the payoff is so huge when it goes well. Mm-hmm. Like nothing feels better than a room full of people laughing at what I just said about like something that's bad that happened to me, that's like true. So like But then on the flip side of that, nothing feels worse than making a room full of people feel bad for me for the worst thing that's happened to me. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like a maybe I'm addicted to the fucking adrenaline rush of what's gonna happen. I don't know, but I do like that. And it's honestly just the crowd control is probably what makes me keep getting up there. Like when you can get them and they're on a ride with you, it feels really good. Maybe I'm a narcissist. I don't know. Probably we all are, aren't we?
A
But
little bit. Sure.
a little bit. I mean, everyone is a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been a hard 4 years. I didn't know what hard was until I got here, though.
Uh-huh.
New York will put some hair on your chest for sure.
Agreed. So how do you find, I'm of the belief that like to really get good at this, we all have a certain number of horrible, bad sets in our life that are like inevitable. How do you deal with things when they don't go so great?
Oh man, I don't deal with it well. I beat myself up a lot. Sometimes right now, like out here, I'll just call someone back home, someone that I know knows I'm funny, and that'll make me feel better, because there's also something that someone told me one time. I did bomb back home in Michigan, extra at Max Bar. I'm not sure right now. This is
Nice.
one of the only spots to get up in Lansing. But I just like felt like I didn't do well. I was, especially when I was like first starting out, I was one of those comics that like I like, well, I'm not fun to be around after I bomb. You know what I mean? Like I
Sure.
go back to the group and I just want to sit there and not talk.
Sure.
Someone came up and they were like, "Hey, knock it off. We know you're funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal, and you're acting like an asshole about it." And I was like, "Fuck." You know what I mean? So like ever since then, I was just like, okay. And 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 then sometimes even when you bomb, you get someone that comes up to you and they're like, "I like your stuff" or whatever, and then you poo poo them. You're like, "Oh no, that I hated it up there" or something. And I'm like, quit yucking people's yuck. Just let people like what they like. And so now when it happens, I just try. It's now out here, it's not as big of a deal because I do kind of go to the same mic. So like when I bomb, I'm like, no, I know these people and I know that they know I'm funny and they're trying something out or whatever it is, you know. Um, so it's been a little bit easier, and also I can just way easier get another set in out here than I could because in Michigan as a Lansing comic, you're working out your material mostly in Grand Rapids or Detroit because there's I don't know. We also book out monthly because there's not a lot of comedians, so we don't have show up go up. We don't have a lot of show up go up spots in Michigan.
Gotcha.
You sign up a month in advance.
Yeah.
But oh goodness, I lost my train of thought of where I was going with all of that.
Well, it sounds like there's a little bit more kind of regularity in the Michigan system versus out here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. Yeah. But then maybe you have it sounds like you kind of found your community out here though. And I mean, if things go badly, it's like, well, big deal. You have that support system. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Oops, I think I skipped one question. So you mentioned that you feel a little bit more confident about like being planned. You're not so much of a crowd worky type person. And in the moment you'd rather be set and ready to go. Like, what is your process these days for writing and sculpting material? Like, what does it look like for you?
I do a lot of stuff that's from like my own life. I know a lot of comics do that, but like I genuinely like if I don't know, like I just wrote a joke about chlamydia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have chlamydia, but someone was like, "You need to get tested for chlamydia," and I was like, I'm instantly like, that's just my go-to is just to be like, oh, I'm pissed off that I might have chlamydia, and I'm just gonna go talk about that. So I guess that is kind of so sorry. I guess that is kind of kind of a risk in a sense of not being able or not writing it down, just getting up there and doing it.
Mhm.
But I'm so sorry about
No problem.
driving me insane. So I'll do stuff like that, but then so a lot of times I'll say something funny, and like my roommate or my friend will be like, "You need to write that down," and then it's kind of just like a punchline that I'm working backwards from. Like a lot of my like favorite jokes are lines that I think are funny. Like one of the most recent ones is like that I was just like, I want to be able to say, if we're in the same weight class, I'll let you do some open hand stuff. And I'm like, how do I get there? You know, like so it'll just I get like these weird phrases in my head, and sometimes that's how I'll write it. Um, but I also go through a lot. Like I have Google Keep, if you know what that is.
Mm-mm.
It's like the notes app on steroids. You can like put labels on things and like organize them. Like you can color code. It's a whole thing. It's a
Nice.
nerd's wet dream.
Yeah.
But it's so I'll like go back through and like rework old jokes, and like I'm constantly doing that. And every time I have like if I do get a phrase in my head, I'll try and think of if I have like a premise that I've already written for it, if that makes any sense. And see, I'll just plug things into each other and see if they work. But yeah, it's mostly material about like my life and stuff. Like I don't know, like I have some jokes about my dad, and he's like, I don't like those, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like so there's like kind of a lot of risk, in talking about yourself. Like it's vulnerable,
Yeah.
to talk about your chlamydia test and like when it's real. Like some people might just think you're joking and not even like take it into consideration that you're like being real about it. But I'm like, oh no, this happened to me. This is real.
Gotcha. You said that was Google Keep?
Yeah, Google Keeps. It looks like a light bulb.
Okay, I gotta look into that because I just use
Yeah,
like a note. I'm the same way where it's like sometimes it's just a phrase and I have no idea what I want to do with it, but I gotta record it right away. Because I know I'm gonna do something with it eventually. So no, I gotta check that out. Google Keep.
yeah. No, it's great. I've been recommending it to everybody. Everybody. That one's great, but I also have like notebooks. Like I'm a notebook person for
Yeah,
sure. Like I do most of like the working out of the joke in a notebook, and then kind of the finished product goes into Keeps. And Keeps
gotcha.
is nice too because it's a Gmail, so you can just send it to anyone with a Gmail. Like
Mhm.
if you are having trouble with the joke, you can just send it to your friend, and then they can make an edit and
Yeah,
like review it for you. So I write with friends a lot too. Like
nice.
sometimes like a lot of my like most favorite like tags are from my friends, and when they fail, I'm like, God fucking damn it. Like that's not mine. I hate it.
Right. No, what I love is there's no rules and there's no one way to do it. Do you have like a consistent amount of time that you write per day or per week, or do you kind of find the time, or is it just kind of organic as you're going?
Um, I was really structured for a long time. When I lived in Michigan, it was way easier for me to be disciplined. Um, and I've lost it since I moved out here. I think I just feel more busy. There's more stuff to do.
Mhm.
Most of the things I do, I have to do with my legs, and I'm just like tired all the time.
Yeah,
Uh, but I used to try and do 30 minutes a day every single day and just make it like the thing I did in the morning.
nice.
And that's just writing. That's not editing. That's just writing ideas down and just trying things in different ways or different words. I'm really big on word economy. I try and cut the fat. If I don't, I'm not a storyteller. I want it to be as set up and punch as it can be, um, without losing anything that I really want to say. Because I also hoard words. As much as I like to trim the fat, I'm like, oh no, I want to say this thing particularly. So it's going to be long, but
Right. No, I get that. It's such a like a tightrope sometimes to walk between the way you originally wrote it and then getting it lean and mean and yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So what's something right now that you feel like in your overall like practice as a comedian what's something that you're working on right now? Is it a bit? Is it a skill? Is it marketing? Are you working on like a certain length of material? And certainly you can talk about, as many things as you'd like to.
Yeah, right now it is like the riffing and the crowd work and all of that because it is a skill that you need to have. As much as it makes me uncomfortable and I don't even really enjoy it. Like when other people do it, I don't like hold anything against them, but I'm just like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? You're doing the thing, but it is a skill. It's a good skill to have, especially for hosting.
Yeah.
Not that I want to be a host for the rest of my life, but it's a good skill for hosting. So I want to do that. I want to be a little bit more physical. I kind of just stand in one spot when I do stand-up comedy, which is, I don't know. I just think it's going well for me, and I'm kind of just standing there telling jokes. So I'm like, if I do a little bit more, I think there's no reason it shouldn't be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm working on that right now. I mean, as far as time goes, it's hard to say. I'm just excited if I get like a 10 spot or a 15 or whatever. I was doing 30 when I was back home, so I'm interested in looking at something or looking at like going on the road or like just leaving New York in general so I can get more stage time.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done 30 minutes in almost a year. So, that's like a hard thing too, where it's like, oh, I have all of this new material and I had 30 before I moved, probably written 15 or 20 since I've been out here.
Mhm.
So there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do 45 minutes, but I've never done 45 minutes and I don't have opportunities to do 45 minutes right now. So right now I'm working on, trying to get in. I work at New York Comedy Club in Stamford. So I made some Connecticut comedian friends out there. So I'm like, oh, I'll start up in Connecticut, see if I can uh, do some bigger sets outside of the city. So that's kind of a goal right now is to just find those 20 or 30-minute spots to get used to doing it again. Because I'm a new comic. I mean, Warriors isn't shit compared to what most people were into what's to come also, And so yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I just want to get comfortable and get really good at those kind of instruments. I would really like to go on the road and feature for anybody. I don't. I just want to. That's the goal of mine right now, and getting the podcast going. But as far as stand-up comedy goes, just being better off the cuff and not even better, just more comfortable. I'm just uncomfortable talking to people. I don't like it.
Gotcha.
Every time I do it, I talk to the audience and then like sometimes I'll get a laugh because I'm like, I regret this. I should not have engaged. Like I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
But it's good when you have those hecklers. Like if someone heckles me, I'm just gonna pretend they didn't talk to me and just say the next word louder and continue. My joke. So that's an area of improvement for sure.
Do you
The fourth ball stuff.
Yeah. Do you find you get heckled a lot?
Not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I did get heckled when the last show I hosted, I got heckled and that was kind of annoying, but if they're not a malicious heckler, you can, in general, when you talk over them, they won't do it again, especially like at the beginning of a show, I was hosting, so it's like, make your mistakes with me, I suppose, but but usually if they're not a malicious heckler, if they're not someone that's there to like try and be a part of the show or like throw you off, they're gonna realize when you like really just like mow over whatever the fuck they just said and keep talking, like they're gonna stop. So it's worked for me so far. But when I get a heckler, I'm just like, oh, give it up for this guy. That's all I can do is just be like, oh, give it up for this guy, and then I'll be like, was it worth it? I don't know, but I don't crush them. I'm not comedian destroy heckler, like no.
I sort of I kind of feel the same sensibilities. For sure. All right.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, but setting those little goals makes it easier. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't tackle them all at once. So right now, I'm like, oh, I'll just try and riff more. You know?
Definitely. And I was just watching another podcast where they were saying it almost seems like crowd work to the general public has become like a barometer for how good of a comedian you are. And it's like, well, that's one skill. And I think we all admire that skill, but I mean, it's just interesting that way. Like so many of my friends send me videos all the time. And I mean, usually I appreciate it. In my head, I'm always like, I post a short a day, my friend. You could send my shorts to other people. But anyway, I'm getting off the topic.
Yeah.
It's usually a crowd work video. And it's like, yeah, they're good at that. That's a different skill than writing.
Yeah, it's definitely a different muscle. And but that's the other thing about it is that like and this is just my opinion, but I think the reason crowd work videos are even a thing are because people don't want to burn their material. So it's like that guy doesn't just do that, you know.
Yeah.
That guy, he doesn't just do, you know, I mean, like I don't know, like even like Lucas Zelnick, like I'm sure he has jokes that he does that are not just talking to the crowd, but he's very good at talking to the crowd and it works for him, you know.
Sure.
But no, people do expect that as a barometer of comedy in a certain way. And I remember I was back home at the Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase and at their open mic, and a guy was coming to do it for his first time, and he was like, "Oh, some of my friends sit in the front row. I like gave them things to yell out at me, you know, like that's not stand, you know what I mean? Like that's not what we're doing."
Wow.
But you know, this is younger, like that's I don't know, you know, if you have no influence of stand-up comedy, I might have thought, hell, if I had an iPhone at 16, thought, you know, that's what stand-up comedy was and had my parents didn't show me anything, like I would have thought that that's what it was too. I don't know. So people don't want to burn material, and that's why that's why the phase happened, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a great point as far as not burning through all your core stuff. Yeah. Would you describe any positive milestone or multiple in your comedy experience?
I have felt so blessed through all of my comedy experience. Like for real, I'm a secret Christian. Like I'm not like a Bible thumper. I don't read that. I don't read it, but I know that there's something looking out for me, and I'm thankful for the highs and the lows. But I guess the first comedy high is probably I went to Savage Henry. It was my first comedy festival. That's up in Northern California, and I was doing this shitty dispensary show. It was like a 3 p.m. show at a dispensary in Eureka, California, which is, if you don't know, it's like it's just such a small eclectic town. The vibe is pajamas with a leather jacket. Like it's got such a weird, like the people are just strange, you know, and no one's in there except for one guy from the street, right? And so I'm doing my jokes and trying my best, and I hear like laughs from the back of the dispensary, and it was Sam Tallent, and he was at the festival. He's going to headline the festival. This was obviously before he popped off, and he was like, "Hi, I'm Sam. What's your name? You're really funny." And that was like I was like, you know, like that's crazy. And he's been super cool to me. He's let me do like some guest spots when he comes to Detroit. And,
Nice.
He's been super cool to the Michigan comics, and really thankful for him. And we didn't stay like in touch or anything. It was just a cool moment, you know. And then probably I hosted for Dave Attell at Ridleys Comedy Castle. That was really, really fun. He was such a nice guy, and he brought me up and like this was one of the moments that made me feel like I need to be better at ripping and roasting and like all of this. He like the end of the second show of the night, he was like, "Oh, let's get Alaina back out here to bump mics," and I was like, "What an amazing experience I'm about to choke at!" Like, you know, like holy
Nice.
shit. But he was he was nice. He set me up, and I knocked a couple down. Like
Yeah.
I think he realized I wasn't uh yeah, he realized that he pointed out some people for me to roast. You know what I mean? He's like, "What about him? Would you date him?" And I'm like, "Absolutely," like just stuff like that. But that was super cool. And then I guess my final milestone, uh, like the most recent one, I was at Savage Henry again. Savage Henry just keeps giving me cool moments, and it's such a weird little festival, but it's so kick ass. I like it's punk rock. I love it. It's uh just such a fun group of like from everywhere. New York, Denver, Portland, like just all these like weird places that I don't know how I would meet you. Like I've never been to Denver, but
Yeah.
anyway, uh but it was the last show of the festival, and I did 7 minutes, 10 minutes, I can't remember what it was. But I did really, really well, and I did Larry Nassar stuff, and I did some new Larry Nassar stuff, and it just crushed. Like I don't know. People were saying best set of the night, but whatever. And it was uh Emma Arnold was the headliner for that night. I don't know if you know who that is. But she like took some of her time on stage to uh I guess sing me high praise for talking about stuff like that, and that was like surreal, I guess, to have, like at the end of her set, she was like, "I love Savage Henry, I love Eureka, I love coming here and seeing new comics every year, and seeing comics that can talk about hard stuff." And then she like pointed at me and was like, "I'm talking about you, stand up," like, like whatever. And it was like a really nice moment. So that was good. Like I feel blessed, I'm like everything's good. I don't care where I'm getting up. It's gonna be fine, like it's okay. I say that now, and tonight I'll be like, "Oh my God, I'm not getting up anywhere."
Right. And that's how it goes. But
Yeah, yeah.
those are amazing moments. That's
And
awesome.
I'm sure I'm missing, I mean, there's so many other good ones, like watching good buddies crush at good shows. You know what I mean? Like all of that is like equally as cool. But as far as like things that have happened to me, uh, those are some of my highlights.
Those are great. All right. We are going to move into kind of the opposite of that. Would you describe a time that you learned an important comedy lesson by having a negative experience?
Yeah. Even like it wasn't negative necessarily. Because you learned an important lesson, right? So how
Yeah.
negative could it be? But like, but just like, back to the Larry Nassar stuff. Just been hosting a lot more,
Mhm.
and I've learned that that's not hosting material, and so that's been an interesting thing that's kind of been set in stone over the last like month for me. Where I'm like, oh, sometimes it works, sometimes it definitely doesn't. So for the ratio to working and not working, you should just do other jokes if you're gonna be the first one up. Don't create a "I got molested" hole as a lineup. But like,
Yeah.
so that I bombed pretty hard at Max again on my sweatshirt here. It's uh that's one of the spots in Lansing I would get up the most, where I really learned, like, I don't know, I guess the building blocks on how to be a comic. So I've had a lot of times when I've gone up at Max and I just don't remember being up there. My shit's like that, where I'm like, I've created a new personality to deal with this loss. Like I don't even that wasn't even me that happened to. But I had one time I did a Larry Nassar joke, and there was it went well. The show was fine. Everything was going good. And afterwards, there was this girl standing by the green room, and she was crying. And I was like, "That's for me. That one's for me. I know it, And she was like, "Hi, I don't like you're really funny. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to apologize." And whenever someone says that, you're like, "Well, what do you want me to do then?" I'll like whatever you're about to say, I'm gonna have to say I'm sorry.
Right.
And with talking about the Larry Nassar stuff, I do have a lot of people that want to like share their trauma with me, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is like that." I don't know, I need to work that out, but I'm like, that's kind of I don't know if that's the expense I pay for talking about what I talk about, or if that's none of like not really like something I need to worry about, I guess, you know. Because it's also different. I don't know. My shit, everyone's shit's different. So like, that was a hard one to just have to choose. Like, it was just like hit a little bit too close to home, and
Yeah.
yada yada yada, some sort of incest thing, and I'm like, that's not even the same thing. But I get it that it's triggering. You know what I mean? But like,
Right.
just like those ones are hard. Those ones are like, those are the ones that when that starts happening, I'm like, I'm taking a break from this material. Not even because I don't believe in it, just because I'm like, it's hard. Maybe it needs more work, whatever it is. Or maybe this person is just too sensitive right now for what happened,
Yeah.
to laugh at something of this nature. But those are the ones those bombs are the hardest bombs for sure. But it also teaches me that I'm like, you never know what's going on with anyone in the audience. Um, anything you say could hit really close to home, especially when I talk about like dark stuff and things of that nature. But those are the hardest ones to deal with because I feel like I've hurt somebody, or like, which is obviously not the intent. Like, we're joking. It's not the intention at all is to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, like, it is my stuff to talk about, so
Yeah.
it's hard to not like also burden myself with other people's stuff. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, your sexual assault is yours. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
hearing about it is kind of hard for me, to be honest. So I'm like, maybe I should stop talking about it on stage. I don't want to hear about other people's shit. I don't know. Going through a moment with that right now, even though it's going well. I don't know.
Um, I'm sorry to ask you this in real time, and we can certainly edit this out. I don't know if you want to post in the text for this episode some resources, or not. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, if we find some, yeah, we find some, send them my way. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, I
Okay.
don't. I mean, there's an
No,
army of survivors. I think that
sure.
one's mostly for athletes that are experiencing, you know,
Yeah.
sexual
Like
assault. But
I
but
had a
yeah, no, I mean,
no, sorry.
call the suicide hotline. I
Yeah.
don't do it. I don't. It's all gonna be okay. I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going through a moment with it because I feel like I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, if that makes any sense. Not because I'm like struggling with the incident itself, I guess, but
For sure.
it does feel burdenous at times, and at other times it makes me feel very light and free. So it's a push and a pull, and I'm not talking about rainbows up there, so it's gonna ruffle feathers, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think good comedy does.
Yeah. And I was offering that again. I don't want to do that thing where I'm like, well, now let me say something, because this is
No,
the
do it,
perfect
please.
opportunity for me not
Yeah.
to like stick my snout in. But like I had another guest who was just talking about general mental health struggles, and it just looked like a good opportunity to put some like suicide prevention resources and things like that. I'm not trying to turn that. I mean, this is a podcast about comedians, but if
No.
it's a baby podcast, but if stuff like that pops up, again, because I'm an educator, it just feels irresponsible to me to not try to
Yeah.
address it in some way. But also, I'm saying explicitly, I'm not trying to like, well, Alaina just shared this incredibly insightful answer. I have to have a responsibility to say something. Like, no, normally I would move on, but if I just move on, it feels like a lost opportunity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I mean, I'm totally comfortable with resources being shared. Obviously, it's it's just I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know any. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know
no, no,
where to
no.
direct you, but
No,
yes,
gotcha.
put them on there.
Yeah. So no, well, I'll track down a
I'm a
few.
terrible sexual abuse survivor. I'm like, I don't know where the resources are.
That's all
I
right.
just am gonna talk about it on stage until
Yes.
therapy starts working. I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, we'll track down some
Okay.
to provide people with for sure before this goes out tomorrow. Um, So aside from maybe fame and monetary success, and I'm always, I'm not trying to, maybe I need to rephrase this question because it's not so much about like death. When you think about what a dream comedy legacy would look like for you, like what you want people to take away from what you put out into the world as far as your comedy, like what does that look like for you?
I mean, I don't really know what I want people to take away from it, because for me, I'm like, it's not. I mean, even God, it sounds so crazy. I'm like, it's not that deep. And I'm like, I'm talking about crazy deep stuff in my car, like sometimes in my comedy. You know what I mean? I'm like, I just want you to laugh. I just like want people, especially with the dark stuff. I think anyone that does dark humor just wants people to know that like there is funny in all of it, and like yes, it takes time and all of that to get over it and to find the funny in it, but like there's humor in everything, which is kind of a generic blanket answer. But I mean, in genuinely that's what I would like people to take away from it. For me, it's kind of like a thing where I'm like, oh, I want to take this thing that is in no way relatable to you and force you to see it the way that I see it. Makes me feel understood. I guess in a way. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I just want to be able to do comedy at a capacity where I can, be able to be in the spot where I get to do the hour, you know, and wherever I'm doing it from. But I'd like people to know me enough that I could, eat off of comedy and
Yeah.
maybe move back to Michigan someday. Like, I really would like to make that my home base again someday. I don't know when. But that's a goal of mine is, move back to mid Michigan, which sounds lame, but like I want kids and a family and I want that stuff some days, and I don't want to do that here necessarily. At least right now, that's my thought on it. I see kids out here and I have dogs. It's not the same thing, but I'm like, oh, even taking care of the dogs in the city, I don't even like that. Can't imagine a child and school and all of that. So I would love to go back to Michigan and be able to successfully do comedy from there.
All right.
That's my comedy legacy. I want to go back to Michigan.
Well,
I'd love to make it big, but I like to be able to just big enough to go back to Michigan.
There you go. You make it big
fly
and
out from there.
yeah, and go get a big place in Michigan because of what all the hard work and your success in New York. You were like, yeah. No, I like that a lot. Okay, so maximum-ish, again, if we're really cooking, we'll move beyond that. But just kind of 10 minutes, anything else that you'd like to say or anything else that we didn't cover? I know you mentioned you didn't feel like you had anything specific to promote, but just kind of 10 minutes to bring the episode to a close, and anything else you feel like people should know. Once again, maybe just you give us social information so that people can follow you, so that we have that on the audio, and we'll certainly have that in text as well. But like 10 minutes to start wrapping up the episode.
Yeah. Well, I will be going back when I share this. I'll probably have some people from Michigan watching. I'm gonna be back Thanksgiving weekend for Mark Ridleys Comedy Castle. I'm gonna host for Zach Martina, and that should be really fun. So there's gonna be a show on Wednesday. We're skipping Thursday, obviously, and then Friday, Saturday. It's gonna be 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. Zach is a really great comic. You guys should look up at Zach Martina. Zach with a CH, not a K. But so I'm really excited for that. That'll be my last trip home for the year. I don't think I'm gonna go home for Christmas just because the comedy festivals and the trips home I've already taken have sucked me dry. So I'm gonna go home for this paid weekend, and that'll be it for the year. And my podcast should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping. It's a solo podcast, and then occasionally I have guests. I'm thinking I might do like on and off weeks of that. So it would be like a solo podcast, which would be a shorter episode. I'm not talking to myself for an hour. That's insane. So it'll be like a 20, 30-minute episode. And then the next week, I'm thinking I'm going to do like an hour-long episode with a friend.
Yeah.
Kind of set up this like room in here, contact paper, all the stuff, so that I can get that going. And I don't have a podcast for that. That's just on my Instagram at Alaina Bamfield Comedy, and on YouTube at Alaina Bamfield Comedy. YouTube, there's like a separate like playlist for it, and I've got I think like 6 episodes on YouTube that are like video, and those are in my childhood bedroom, sitting in my bed. But all of my favorite episodes are the ones that I did when it was still like audio only. I missed when podcasts were audio only. I'm like, golly, I gotta put my face in it. Like, but it helps to put it on multiple like to have it on multiple platforms, if that makes any sense. Like, you take the audio version of this and put it on Spotify.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
We'll have like the audio and all Spotify and Apple Podcasts and yes, for sure.
Yeah. And I think I have like 50 episodes if you are just listening on Spotify.
Nice.
So a lot of those are solo episodes, and I love listening. I love podcasting because especially with the solo episodes, because they're short, and when I go back and listen to them, I'm like, this is crazy. Like I remember recording this, and I don't completely hate it, but yeah. So podcast is coming back. Look out for that. I'll post about it on my Instagram for sure. And yeah, right now it's hard to promote because I'm just kind of like I'm getting things day of, week of, like I'm doing Tiny Cupboard tonight, but it just comes out tomorrow. You know what I mean? So like, I don't have anything the rest of the week. But yeah, just the podcast.
Nice.
Just the podcast. I might post some talking head videos on Instagram. I have a reel that I'm gonna post. I'm hoping that does good. I don't know what the algorithm is. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
I feel like the people that post at the most random times are doing the best.
I agree.
And I'm like tracking the algorithm. What's going on? Why can't I do this?
You are not alone in that feeling. YouTube has been very good to me with shorts since June, and TikTok I know a lot of people have strong feeling. Like I take the same short. I've been doing a short a day since June, and those 2 platforms have been very good to me. And I'll post the same thing on Instagram. I know the algorithm there is not the biggest fan of recycled content. But those first 2 apps at least have been very, very good to me. But Instagram, yeah, I spend a lot of time watching other people. I spend a lot of time on Instagram going, good for them.
Yeah,
that got that many views.
Have you tried posting it to Instagram first, so it's not recycled content?
Maybe I should start doing that. Maybe that's the trick. Let me start doing. I'm always trying to hit noon or a couple like noon consistently for YouTube. So maybe I got to do it like 5 minutes earlier for Instagram. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's hard. And it changes constantly. It's always changing. So
it absolutely does. Awesome.
Terrible.
Yeah. Well, Alaina, thank you so much. And again,
thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this was really, really great. And for everybody who's watching or listening, once again, we'll have all that information where you can follow Alaina. Make sure you're following her on Instagram, and then you can hear about when the podcast comes out. And just keep up with everything that she's doing. Like I said, super funny, made a big impression on me in the couple times that I've had her on shows, and I knew she was going to be an awesome interview, which she totally is. Please make sure, everybody, that you are liking or subscribing or following or all that good stuff wherever you're watching and listening to this podcast. We try to release every Monday at noon with a new guest, and I'm thrilled now that I have my Alaina Bamfield episode that I could put out into the world, because she's a great comedian and a really enjoyable person. So that's the other nice part about this podcast, is like, even if I've had slightly limited interactions with people, if those interactions were positive, like, let me reach out to those people, because in this format, not to do this, but like that's me patting myself on the back for the people.
Yeah.
I think this is a good questionnaire, and every single time I run a new comedian through it, I learn something, because I'm just really enjoying talking to my comedian friends. So everybody who is watching or listening to this, again, thank you, Alaina, and thank you everybody for your time and your attention. Make sure, please, that you're following and supporting both of us. And thanks so much. We will see you on the next great episode with another interesting, insightful comedian. This has been another episode of the 96 Person Bringer podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Stoops. This was Alaina Bamfield. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.